You can't flourish in your own hometown. No one sees change. They only see when you did this, when you did that, how you were, who you were. They don't know all the work you've done inside yourself. In the Bible, Jesus said, I could never be a prophet in my own hometown. So he went everywhere else but his own hometown, which later he returned to preach the gospel, but he had already reached thousands of followers by that time. Don't be afraid to leave your environment. Don't be afraid to step up to the confines of your own mind, because there are so many things that we could imagine and we could show our own self that if we leave where we are from, we can grow to become something beautiful. And I actually had the experience of this. I didn't realize what was going on around me when I lived in my own hometown. I was a bird that couldn't fly. I was stuck there with no rhyme or reason to live. I didn't know where I was going. I was surviving, and that was it, because that's all I had known in that town. But I made plans. I made 5 different plans, and each one of them failed except for the last one. And the last one was to leave where I was from and put it behind me. So the old had gone and the new had come, because I left for almost 10 years. And when I came back, nothing was the same. Nobody was the same. And I did still feel the same about that place. But I had changed. And I could tell that people didn't see the new, and they only could see the old. I couldn't flourish from my own hometown. And that's what I'm telling you. Use your imagination. Create plans in your mind of leaving the environments that you're in so you can flourish. This life is about becoming all that you can be in the moment and now, not what you were yesterday or before, not what you're going to be in the future, because everything you're doing right now, in 5 years, that's going to be exactly what you become. Whether you're out drinking, whether you're out partying, doing illicit drugs, whether you're having multiple partners, whatever it is, just know that those things are going to affect you more than you could ever imagine in 5 years, because everything you're doing right now will lead up to that point. And if no one tells us these things, we're going to continue just surviving and never thriving. You need to learn to flourish in a different environment. You need to use your imagination and create plans. And when that first plan fails, you go to plan B. When that plan fails, you go to plan C. And you try it out, and you continue to try it out until you become a success. Imagination is our innate ability to form creative images or pictures in our minds. Someone with a vivid imagination can create clear and creative pictures or novel pictures in their minds. Imagination has 2 concepts. 1, the capacity to conceive novel ideas. And 2 is the ability to translate those novel ideas into pictures and mental images. The imagination plays a vital role in psychological development, creativity, product innovations, and the culture and society at large. Albert Einstein said in an interview in 1929, imagination is more important than knowledge, for knowledge is limited, whereas imagination embraces the entire world, stimulating progress, giving birth to evolution. Thank you guys for listening to the Only You podcast. Einstein was voicing the value he placed on the imagination concerning scientific research, an area traditionally and currently dominated by pure rationalism. And I'm a rational person, so I totally get it, because some things that don't make sense to us isn't always how things really truly are. Because without Nikola Tesla or Thomas Edison, all the things that we have today and in this lifestyle that we're living would never be possible without all the electrical advancements that they had made, even though Tesla was never given the credit he deserved, and he worked for Edison for pennies on the dollar, and Edison pretty much didn't believe in Tesla's ideas. And at one point, Edison actually traveled the United States, and he would, electrocute cattle to death to prove that Tesla's alternating current was deadly and it could kill stuff. In reality, he was just doing that because he couldn't believe that, Tesla was that smart, and it pretty much devalued direct current electricity, which Edison had created. Thank you guys for listening to the Only You podcast. And today's podcast is going to be pretty much based on the imagination, the cognitive science that is behind it. And, we're going to talk about some different things. Like Carl Jung differentiated between the personal unconscious and the collective conscious. The unconscious is what I just defined. It's a storehouse of our personal memories and experiences. The collective unconscious is a storehouse of images, thoughts, feelings, memories, behavioral patterns in which our human brain is hardwired always to see patterns, whether it be patterns in a relationship, whether it be patterns on the job, or like machines making the same mistakes. Our brains are hardwired from birth to realize those. Jung actually believe that the universal images, symbols, and behavioral patterns are called archetypes. And I had told you about archetypes long before this in our second season. These archetypes appear to be a part of our cultural and biological inheritance. And it is deep in the recesses of this collective unconscious that we find a wellspring of creativity, the source of our imagination. And thank you all for listening. Thank you for following me. I recently just got an email from Spotify, and they let me know because I had uploaded my podcast to Apple's podcast platform due to a couple friends not having Spotify. And now my podcast is 15th over all podcasts in the country of Egypt. So I thought that was pretty cool to share with my audience, my fan members. So thank each and every one of you for making that possible. And thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. And thank you for growing and learning with me as I took this journey a couple years back. And I'm still here. I'm still doing this. So thank you, fan members. And thank you for the 5-star reviews. And get out there and try this yourself. It's actually a lot of fun. And it gives you time to really think about the different behavioral situations that we go through as human beings, and it makes us second guess what we should and shouldn't be doing, or, not second guess, but like, have cognitive thinking over what we should be and shouldn't be doing, and being better human beings and growing and developing, because some of us live in situations where we're not able to use our imaginations to help us grow and develop. And our imagination is one of the greatest gifts that God has given us on this planet to use, develop, learn creativity, to learn overall developmental skills that we wouldn't be able to have unless we leave our hometown and flourish elsewhere before returning. And this is going to happen by using your imagination to grow, develop, and to create your own authenticity in your life, because a lot of us are just surviving and not thriving. So thank you for listening to the Only You podcast. When you're a kid, your brain is in constant recognition mode. Everything you do is new. Everything you do, your brain or your processing unit is trying to figure it out. As you get older, say you start school, it's exciting right at the beginning. But, 6 years in, it's not that glamorous anymore, because your brain says, I know how to do this. Then your brain literally just shuts off. And we talked about when your brain goes offline, how it affects everything around you, and you just start surviving because your brain already knows how to do all those things. Now it's in program mode because that's your processing unit. The subconscious mind and the brain doesn't know the difference between the body and the imagination, everybody. This is why when we imagine things that are scary for us or life-threatening for us, even if we're just, at work or at school or wherever we are, maybe these things are stress-inducing, and you actually are feeling that emotion in real time at that moment. This is the basic mechanism for anxiety, but also it's the basic mechanism for empathy. So if you're at work, imagining let's say your girlfriend is out cheating on you, your boyfriend's out cheating on you, you're actually causing your amygdala to set off hormone-producing receptors of, let's say, adrenaline, and then that causes the fight or flight response feelings because your imagination is making your body think this is happening exactly at that moment right now. Researchers discovered children's ability to process emotional cues is largely established by the time they start school. Analyzing brain scans from children ages 5 to 15, the study revealed that such brain activity becomes increasingly similar to their peers as they reach adolescence. The research emphasizes the importance of early intervention to address issues related to understanding emotional cues. And the key facts, here's one. The research team analyzed brain scan data from 823 children who were shown emotionally nuisanced videos while in an MRI scanner. The distinct brain activity patterns corresponding to each emotion were noted. 2, the study provided evidence that the optimal time for intervention is during early childhood to support a child's social and emotional development better. 3, the study led author Dr. M. Catalina Camacho is involved in a pilot study to explore how these emotion-specific activation patterns emerge in early childhood among children at risk for anxiety. She believes such information can inform relationship and parenting-focused interventions, and children with specific psychiatric symptoms such as anxiety may struggle to understand emotional cues when people around them are happy, sad, or angry. And the lack of understanding can make it difficult to respond appropriately in social situations. But studying brain scans from hundreds of children ages 5 to 15, researchers at Washington's University School of Medicine, St. Louis, have found that children's brains process emotional cues typically is mostly set by the time they are at school age. And as they reach adolescence, such brain activity becomes similar to the way the brains of their peers process such cues. And it's like they say, you're only as strong as your weakest link. And that's why, is because we are such sponges when we're kids and we absorb everything. So if you want to, develop, let's say, the greatest kid ever on the planet, you're not going to let just anybody around your kid because they're sponges. And I feel like dogs and animals are the same way. If you let them around certain people, they become certain ways, just like kids. The research provides additional evidence that the best time to intervene to address issues, to address issues children may have in reading, others, and emotional cues is early, even before they start school. It appears that activation patterns in the brain for processing naturalistic emotional cues are pretty well set by the time the child reaches school age. And while the patterns become more redefined in adolescence, they don't change substantially, everybody. And what that means is that when the response to others' emotions is unusual, as it can be in anxiety, autism, or depression, we really need to be intervening during early childhood to better support the child's social and emotional development. And I think everybody out there knows that. Thank you guys for listening to the Only You podcast, and hopefully you enjoyed this wonderful read, learning about the imagination. Also, I wanted to add about ADHD that imagination really affects your ADHD, and that's why I kind of brought up anxiety and depression, because we create these situations with our daymares, like not nightmares, but daymares with people with ADHD, because they have an overactive imagination that causes triggers in their adrenaline and their dopamine, because sometimes people act a certain way because they're lacking dopamine, so they can become aggressive and act out. But then again, once they act out and act silly, their adrenaline kicks in. So then they'll be talking about something, then they'll just spin off and take off and go somewhere else and start talking to somebody else, because they're constantly in a fight or flight mode. And ADHD is one of the worst things that people misdiagnose with bipolarism or schizophrenia or multi-personality deficit disorders. It's a crazy situation, but ADHD is real. And a lot of people with ADHD don't realize that they had a traumatic upbringing from ages 1 to 3, and they weren't nurtured enough by somebody who was supposed to be there for them. And that's why some of us struggle not understanding how our brains, bodies, subconscious minds, our neuroplasticity, our chemical neurotransmission, our RNA, DNA, and all that stuff kind of all goes together in becoming the overall best human being that we can be, due to, genetic dispositions and our own negative upbringings. Thank you guys for listening to the Only You podcast. This is your host, Lo Jackson, season 3. Welcome back to the Only You podcast. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for sharing me. Thank you for listening and learning. And hopefully things are going well in your life and you're not beating yourself up too bad out there. Today I'm going to be going over Creative Imagination by Theodule Ribot. He was a French psychologist, and today's episode is about the imagination and all the good that it can actually do for you if you know how to harness it, use it, and apply it in your life. Thank you again to all my fans. I'm watching the Carl Jung Red Book podcast that I did last month at the beginning of the month for our first episode on season 3. And it's literally climbing my charts so hard. It's already in like 8th place on my all-time listens, which it's going to have trouble catching my first one, because my first episode last year hit 10,000, and it's climbing. None of that would be possible without each and every one of you. So please know that you're important on this podcast. I do care about you. I'm grateful for you listening. Hopefully I kind of share some stuff that's cool, interesting, and fun, and honestly gives you something to think about and change about and helps you grow. I'm learning a lot. I'm changing a lot. And that's what life's about as human beings, is becoming the ultimate human being that you know how to become. Let's dive right in. Contemporary psychology has studied the purely reproductive imagination with great eagerness and success. The works on the different image groups, visual, auditory, tactile, motor, are known to everyone and form a collection of inquiries solidly based on subjective and objective observation, on pathological facts and laboratory experiments. The study of the creative and constructive imagination, on the other hand, has been almost entirely neglected. It was and would be easy to show that the best, most complete, and most recent treatise on psychology devoted to scarcely and a page or two here and there, often indeed do not even mention it. A few articles, a few brief, scarce monographs make up the sum of the past 25 years' work on the subject. The subject that does not, however, at all deserve this indifferent or contemptuous attitude. Its importance is unquestionable, and even though the study of the creative imagination has hitherto remained almost inaccessible to experimentations, strictly so-called, there are yet other objective processes that permit of our approach, and with some likelihood of success and of continuing the work of former psychologists, but with methods better adapted to the requirements of contemporary thought. The present work is offered to the reader as an essay or first attempt only. It is not our intention here to undertake a complete monograph that would require a thick volume, but only to seek the underlying conditions of the creative imagination, showing that it has its beginning and principal source in the natural tendency of imagination to become objective, or more simply, in the motor elements inherent image, and then following it and the development under its manifold forms, whatever they may be. For I cannot but maintain that at present the psychology of the imagination is concerned almost wholly with its part enthusiastic creation and in the sciences. We scarcely get beyond that. Its other manifestations have been occasionally mentioned, never investigated, yet invention in the fine arts and in the sciences is only a special case, and possibly not the principal one, which there he's talking about the imagination. And thank you guys for listening, and thank you for tuning in. I do appreciate it. The motor nature of the constructive imagination. 1. It has been often repeated that one of the principal conquests of contemporary psychology is the fact that it has firmly established the place and importance of movements, that it has, especially through observation and experiment, shown the representation of a movement to be a movement begun, a movement in the nascent state, and nascent coming or having recently come into existence. Yet those who have most strenuously insisted on the proposition have hardly gone beyond the realm of the passive imagination. They have clung to facts of pure reproduction. My aim is to extend their formula and to show that it explains in large measurement at least the origin of the creative imagination. Let us follow step by step the passage from reproduction, pure and simple, to the creative stage, showing therein the persistence and preponderance of the motor element in proportion as we rise from mere repetition to invention. First of all, do all representations include motor elements? Yes, I say, because every perception presupposes movements to some extent, and representation are the remnants of past perceptions. And we all know that's true because we become like the 5 people we're around the most. Certain it is that without our examining the question in detail, this statement holds good for the great majority of cases. So far as visual and tactile images are concerned, there is no possible doubt as to the importance of the motor elements that enter into their composition. The eye is very poorly endowed with movements for its office as a higher sense organ, but if we take into account its intimate connection with the vocal organs, so rich in capacity for motor combination, we know a kind of compensation. Smell and taste, secondary in human psychology, rise to a very high rank indeed among many animals, and the olfactory apparatus thus obtains with them a complexity of movements proportionate to its importance, and one that at times importance, and one that at times approaches that of sight. There yet remains the group of internal sensations that might cause discussion. setting aside the fact that the vague impressions bound up with chemical change within the tissues are scarcely factors in representation. We find that the sensations resulting from changes in respiration, circulation, and digestion are not lacking in motor elements. The mere fact that in some persons vomiting, hiccups, micronutrition, etc., malnutrition, can be caused by perceptions of sight or of hearing proves that representation of this character have a tendency to become translated into acts. Without emphasizing the matter, we may then say that this thesis rests on a weighty mass of facts that the motor elements of the image tend to cause it to lose its purely inner character, to objectify it, to externalize it, to project it outside of ourselves. It should, however, be noted that what has just been said does not take us beyond the reproductive imagination, beyond memory. All these revived images are repetitions, but the creative imagination requires something new. This is its particular and essential mark. In order to grasp the transition from reproduction to production, from repetition to creation, it is necessary to consider other more rare and more extraordinary facts found only among some favored beings. These facts, known for a long time, surrounded some mystery and attributed in a vague manner to the power of the imagination, have been studied in our own day with much more system and exactness. For our purpose, we need to recall only a few of them. Many instances have been reported of tingling or of pains that may appear in different parts of the body solely through the effect of the imagination. Certain people can increase or inhibit the beating of their hearts at will by means of an intense or persistent representation. The renowned physiologist E.F. Weber posed this power and has described the mechanism of the phenomenon. Still more remarkable are the cases of vesication produced in hypnotized subjects by means of suggestion. Finally, let us recall the persistent story of stigmatized individuals who, from the 13th century down to our own day, have been quite numerous and present. Some interesting varieties, some having only the mark of the crucifix, others of the scourging of the crown of thorns. Let us add the profound changes of the organism, results of the suggestive therapeutics of contemporaries, the wonderful effects of the faith cure, the miracles of all religions in all times and in all places. And that means omnipresent. And this brief list will suffice to recall certain creative activities of the human imagination that we have a tendency to forget. It is proper to add that the image acts not altogether in a positive manner. Sometimes it has an inhibitory power. A vivid representation of a movement arrested is the beginning of the stoppage of that movement. It may even end in complete arrest of the movement. Such are the cases of paralysis by ideas, first described by Reynolds and later by Charcot and his school under the name of psychiatric paralysis. The patient's inward conviction that he cannot move a limb renders him powerless for any movement, and he recovers his motor power only when the morbid representation has disappeared. These and similar facts suggest a few remarks. First, that we have here creation in the strict sense of the word, through it be limited to the organism. And thank you guys for listening to the Only You podcast, and hopefully you're enjoying this. Since the chief aim of this study is to prove that the basis of intention must be sought in motor manifestations, I shall not hesitate to dwell on it. And I take the subject upon it again under another, clearer and more precise and more physiological form, and putting the following question. Which one among the various modes of mind activity offers the closest analogy to the creative imagination? And think about that. If we applied that theory right there to everything we do, we would be perfect in our own way, because that's what our life's about, is becoming the most perfect you can become with the mind that you have, the body that you have, and the things that you know and the things that you learn. So, imagination in the intellectual order is the equivalent of will in the realm of movements. Let us justify this comparison by some proof. 1. Lightness of development in the two instances, growth of voluntary control and progressive, slow, crossed, and checked. The individual has to become master of his muscles, and by their agency extend his sway over things. Reflexes, instinctive movements, and movements expressive of emotion constitute the primary material of voluntary movements. And I think that's what we all lack a little bit, is discipline in certain mental functions that we do have power over, but we just ain't disciplined enough to get it done. Hopefully you've enjoyed Creative Imagination by Theodule Ribot, the French psychologist. This episode was about imagination, and I wanted to say Walt Disney had one of the greatest imaginations, and not a lot of people know this, but I learned this actually this week. I didn't know this, but Far Out Magazine wrote an article, and the article is when Walt Disney became a snitch for the FBI, and it was published on November 10th of 2021. One of the towering figures of the 20th century, Walt Disney did not just influence the world of cinema, but also had a seminal impact on the public imagination of America. Known for his sentimental populism, which underlined most of his works and contributions to the shaping of his image as an enterprising entrepreneur and innovator, Disney's legacy has been passed into the generations. Aside from all these things, Walt Disney was also a formidable political actor whose activities jeopardized the lives and livelihoods of many people whose beliefs happened to differ from his own. Starting in 1940 and right up to his death, Disney was a spy for the FBI who actively supplied intel about his own workers to the Bureau and wrecked the movements orchestrated by labor unions by labeling them as communist agitators. The reports detailing Disney's exchanges with the FBI are available on the Bureau's website, and I checked them out, and it's actually the real documentation of all the stuff that he reported about and did for the FBI. It's pretty interesting. Check it out. It's public record. Having been released to the public due to the Freedom of Information Act, according to these reports, Disney actively expressed his admiration for the insidious crazies of the FBI and let FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover make creative decisions about some of the projects. What did Disney get in exchange for his cooperation? Well, a part of the obvious political advantages and protections, Disney was allowed to film in the Bureau's headquarters. Yeah, Is that not crazy? Disney's intel was so valuable that he was made special agent in charge contact by the FBI in 1954, signifying that Disney was an individual who was capable of providing resources to the FBI, taking care of PR issues as well. It is important to remember that the political climate of that era was especially volatile, with the endless propagation of the Red Scare and attitudes installed by Senator McCarthy. However, Disney was too shrewd to succumb to the folly of patriotism. He used these prevalent political attitudes to his advantage and made sure that the services he rendered to the sinister organization that is the FBI helped his own business. Disney once said, "Once a man has tasted freedom, he will never be content to be a slave." That is why I believe that this frightfulness we see everywhere today is only temporary. Tomorrow will be better, for as long as America keeps alive the ideals of freedom and a better life, all men will want to be free and share our way of life. There must be so much that I should have said, but haven't. What I will say now is just what most of us are probably thinking of every day. I thank God and America for the right to live and raise my family under the flag of tolerance, democracy, and freedom. This was the face Disney showed to the public, but in the context of labor unions and his political alliances, the filmmaking pioneer appears to have been an autocratic tyrant. And in July of 1941, the animators at Disney went on a strike to protest unfair working conditions, and Walt Disney immediately utilized the opportunity to run an advertisement in the Variety where he said, "I am positively convinced that the communistic agitation leadership and activities have brought about this strike." See, he was using that government's information they're putting out to the public to scare everybody. Later, when Disney testified before the farce that was the House Committee on Un-American Activities, he named several animators who were involved in the strike as communist and subversives. Therefore, it is clear that Disney was ready to utilize his connections to achieve his goals. The FBI also played a role in the establishment of Disneyland, which was used by the Bureau for their own operations. And they set up shop there in 1982, and they've been there since. The release document says Mr. Disney has recently established a business association with the American broadcasting company Paramount Theaters for the production of the series television shows, which for the most part are scheduled to be filmed at Disneyland, a multi-million-dollar amusement park being established under Mr. Disney's direction in the vicinity of Anaheim, California. Mr. Disney has volunteered representatives of this office complete access to the facilities of Disneyland for use in connection with official matters and for recreational purposes. Disney wasn't the only spy in Hollywood by any means, with other notable examples like Ronald Reagan routinely supplying information to the FBI about colleagues who harbored communist sympathies. The issue is a systematic problem, where artistic freedom and the freedom of expression, which Americans claim to love dearly, are insidiously squashed by silent censorship and political persecutions. And thank you guys for listening to the Only You podcast. And remember, to flourish, you must leave where you're from. You must grow and become something that no one thought you could, because you acted a certain way that they didn't think was right, or you did something and they didn't think that, you deserved what you had, or whatever it may be, the circumstances, because everything's a circumstance. And we need to realize that. We need to know that we are here to find our purpose, to make sure that we discipline ourselves in certain areas of our lives, that we are of service to someone, somewhere, somehow, because that's what life's about, is being of service to the world some way, somehow. And learning that to flourish, we must pretty much leave the environment that we are so caught up in and belong to. And sometimes it takes just taking a moment and stepping away to realize tomorrow is a brighter day. And if you're suffering from depression, anxiety, know that we sometimes imagine these things and they hit us so hard because we're forcing our body to produce hormones that are causing us to want to run away. We get anxious, we get excited. And then after 10 years of being that way, we're so upset and depressed and stressed because what you're doing right now is what you're going to be doing in 5 years, 10 years, if not maybe even worse. And sometimes we get caught up in things that we don't even realize we're doing. And then you just have to stop, tap the brakes, say, wait a minute. I am enough. I can do this. I'm in charge of me. My individual circles being infringed upon by people that honestly don't care about you as much as you care about yourself. And if you're an enemy to yourself, you need to learn to love yourself because love will overtake all circumstances. Know that if you change your environment, you'll change your life. And know that if you change your environment and go somewhere else, you will flourish. You will see a change. You will know you changed. And if you stay gone long enough, you will see how things were. You will see how they were. You will see that you were in the right and they were in the wrong. You will see things in a different light. And I've done this. And I've continued to grow. I've continued to hustle. And I've continued to become the best human being I know how to be. And I'm trying to share some information with you guys that I think is important. Your imagination is important. And what you do with your time is important. And we're only on this planet for a short while. So don't spend it worrying about being hated on or people thinking something about you because of, economic circumstances or whatever it may be, because we as human beings love to point fingers when, there's always 10 pointing right back at us, and we don't do the work inside of ourselves to have a right to really say a lot sometimes, but then we think that, we should just say something when we don't even have any education about it. It's just feelings and things that we've gone to that we base these theories on that we come up with, and sometimes those theories turn out to be things that hurt us, and insecurities and shortcomings and abuses and predispositions that nobody knows about, and we harbor things inside of ourselves without telling someone about them. We isolate ourselves from social situations and, I'm not going over there because they don't come over here. Or I'm not going to visit them because they don't visit me. And this is how families have become because the government wants us to be divided here. And I do want to say thank you to all my fans in Egypt. I want to say thank you so much for sharing me and thank you for following me. This is your boy, Lo Jackson. I've been doing this for a few years now, and I do appreciate every one of you listening. I'm watching the Red Book climb my charts. I'm watching the analytics. I find this to be really amusing that the information I'm learning about, you two are learning about and loving, and I appreciate that you're using your imagination to develop a plan, to develop what you're going to do next, what you're going to become. If you're 60 years old and you're listening, I hope that you become all you can be. You still got a good life to live. I recently seen a statistic. People 65 years and older right now are smoking more marijuana and drinking more than they ever have in the past. I thought that was really wild. That was a really wild statistic, but I thought I would share that because I do have a lot of 60 plus members out there listening. I have a lot of 38 to 44-year-olds listening. Pretty much it's a mix between male and female and non-binary, binary. I appreciate all of you listening. I hope that you're learning. I hope you're growing. I hope you're changing. And I hope most of all that you're loving, appreciating, and trying to be the best success you know how to be, whether it's, doing something different when you get up tomorrow as opposed to what you did yesterday, because this life's about being better than what you were yesterday. And I do want to say I love every single one of you. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. And I do appreciate all of you all over the world, right here in the United States, I'm honorable. I'm thankful. I'm grateful. I am a patriot. I do believe in freedom. I do believe in democracy. And I do believe that each one of us has something to share that's beautiful inside of us, and that if we cultivated relationships more often and we're more open and not subjective to crazy theories and crazy ideas that are hurting our mental statuses and causing us anxiety and depression, causing our amygdala to produce adrenaline that's causing us to want to fight something or get all upset or run away from something and never come back. And that's why we're going through job after job after job, because nobody likes us, nobody wants us, nobody cares about us, or whatever it is that we do to ourselves. Just know that we are enough and that we can learn new tricks. And the trick is just being aware that you are getting older, you are developing, you are going through things, you're learning. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to say obnoxious stuff sometimes, and it's okay to be you, because no one knows what you have developed like inside of yourself, and none of us know what you're capable of. But I do believe that every single one of us brings something to the table that's admirable, that's honorable, that is the beauty that God instilled inside of you. And hopefully every one of you get a chance to flourish somewhere else that you're not from, because a lot of times when we are trying to stay in the town we grew up in, our imaginations are blocked, locked, and just tossed to the side because the imagination's gone. Your brain is used to all these places. Change, grow, develop, move, leave, do it. You can. It's up to you. You only have one life to live. You know what I'm saying? It's your boy Lo Jackson. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate every single one of you. Each time you tune in, it gets better and better. And thank you again.